Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. My name is Eric Bramlett. I am joined by
Tammy Melchien.
How you doing, Tammy?
Pretty good. A little bit of a headache.
A little bit of a headache. We're going to pray for Tammy's headache to be relieved.
Drugged myself up, so hopefully it'll be done by the time we're done with this.
So we'll pray for the drugs to work is the key. We are coming to you in iPhone land in Plainfield. Normally we have all the highfalutin gear accessible to us in the yellow box. It turns out all you need is a phone and a dream, and we've got both of those things. But we're going to talk to you about this brand new series called Hero Maker. There's another sort of element that we're experimenting with that we're going to add to this podcast, and that is that we actually have a couple of online observers. Jeff Boris and Pat Nelson are here. Guys, say hi. Yeah, with your voices because they can't see you.
Hello.
Good.
Hello.
Okay, good. So they are observing the podcast, and because they are working on kind of a separate track of preparation for the Big Idea Brainstorm. And again, more to come on that. But what you need to know is that there may be an opportunity where they might ask a clarifying question of us, and then we'll answer that question as a part of the podcast. But let's dive in. Hero Maker. Now, I've heard this name before, like as a theme in some way. What am I thinking of? Is it a book?
Not ringing a bell.
Not ringing a bell? Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to invent what it might mean, where it comes from.
Oh, you mean the book by Dave Ferguson?
Oh, yeah, that's right. The book by Dave Ferguson that was released last year was like the theme of the Exponential Conference all last year.
So we're finally
maybe
catching
2
up to
years
it.
ago. It's 2 years ago that it was the exponential theme.
Yeah.
Actually, that's chaos.
We're behind.
We're a little bit behind, but we're excited to be diving into this series. It's a 5-week series. And tell us what we're talking about, Tammy.
Well, if you're familiar with the Hero Maker book, it's about how kind of the shift from being the hero, seeing ourselves as the hero in the story, to being a hero maker, someone who makes heroes of others. Now, if you've read the book, you know that, while it could be broader than this, it was primarily written more to church leadership in that kind of frame. Obviously, that's the perspective that Dave was coming from as he wrote the book. But this series, we're going for hero maker for the everyday person. So if you're familiar with the content from the book and some of the tools in the book and things like that, they're tweaked and they're going to be a little bit different, because what we're really trying to challenge everyone to is to see them as someone who is called to invest in the lives of others. Really the theme for, I guess if there's a theme passage for this series, it's the Great Commission, where Jesus calls every single one of us to make disciples.
Yeah, kind of regardless of whether or not we work at a church or we're a leader at a church, it's that this is everyone's goal and job.
And so in our language, it's kind of like everybody's called to make apprentices who make apprentices who make apprentices. And not necessarily just for, a lot of times we talk about apprentices of your roles here in the church, but also like to think of it broader too, as a parent, you are to make apprentices. In your workplace, maybe there's opportunities for you to make apprentices. And so that's kind of what we're doing with Hero Maker.
All right, well, let's dive into week 1. And this is kind of a series overview of some sort, or it kind of gets in that area.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that's on the series description on the first page of the map, we'll have to cover in the first week to introduce all of this. But really, we're going to be drawing on practices that we see Jesus live out as he made disciples, as he made apprentices. And we're going to draw on 5 of those practices and challenge ourselves to think about how we could live out those practices. One other thing I'll note is in the brainstorm, we had this, Dave talked about when he teaches these 5 practices, he always does like some hand motions just to have people remember each one. I can't remember what they are. I'm sure the first one is.
I can only think of one hand motion. And
don't do that one.
I won't do that one.
And so he was sharing that with us. And then Ian also had kind of the idea with what if we combined that idea with like a prayer that we built each week of the series, almost that idea came up. So you can see on the map, I said, Ian will craft the prayer. So
Nice.
we're going to be playing with that along with that. So there might be, where the first week there's 2 lines of the prayer, and then the next week we add 2 more lines and that kind of stuff. So we build this whole Hero Maker's prayer as we go through this series.
All right. So week 1, thinking like a hero maker.
Yes, and each one of these big idea statements talk about a shift that we have to make. And so this is the one that is in kind of how we look at our lives, the shift from thinking I need to be the hero to how can I make heroes of others. And we see this in Jesus right from the beginning of his ministry. I mean, he really did nothing before he decided, okay, who's going to be doing this with me? And so, right in the beginning, you see him calling disciples to come along. And of course, we know that he had 12 of them. And so, we're gonna see help people to start thinking, okay, when you're, in your home, in your workplace, in your school, wherever you might be, or in your role here at Community, in what way that you're serving, instead of just thinking about, okay, how am I living out this role? Start thinking about how can I be equipping, empowering, investing in the lives of others so that they can live out what God has for them to live out. So this is a shift in thinking. So you see that, right from the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And then really that's where we introduce the Great Commission, because at the end he tells all of us to be doing that. So we want to start getting people thinking about who could I invest in? How could I help make someone else successful? How could I help someone else chase their dream? And again, if you're familiar with Hero Maker, this is where then Dave introduces the napkin and, his whole dream of reaching all Chicago with this, and then encourages everyone to write down their big dream. Well, again, that lends itself much more to like a church kind of ministry type person. And so there have been a couple other churches that have done this series, and we looked at what they did with this and we kind of liked it, is they actually at an early point in the talk have people draw a funnel on the napkin and write all the people that have invested in them, who have helped kind of make them become who they are. And then at the end of the talk, the funnel was flipped, and and you're writing, who do you think you're supposed to kind of pour out and invest in? But again, as we thought of that, I know this might be sacrilege, but we thought it doesn't necessarily really make sense why you have to draw this on a napkin anymore, because it's not Dave's big story. And then Ian had the idea, actually, how you can have those flat oil paper funnels, like they come flat. There's a link in the map too.
Like a snow cone?
Yeah, it looks like a flat. Yeah, I guess the snow cone thing could be the same thing. Like they come packaged flat. That we're going to recommend that we get those instead. So you're actually writing on a funnel,
that's cool.
And then you flip it over and write on the.
Yeah,
other
I remember sitting in that restaurant and I was having a snow cone, and
that's how the story will go.
All right, but that's good. So each week we'll have a simple tool of some sort to be able to kind of to take with us.
I can't help it. We have these other guys on this laptop below the iPhone, and so I keep looking and talking to them.
So
on the iPhone, it's going to look like I'm just looking down at the ground.
I think it's going to be fine.
But
if you hadn't mentioned it, maybe no one would have.
I feel it though. I feel disconnected from the iPhone audience.
Okay, well they're there, and a lot of them just listen to the audio.
Oh, so it doesn't even matter
while they're driving into work that day.
I don't even know what I'm talking about
before their brainstorm
meeting. Let's move on.
All right. Yeah, questions?
No, I said burn.
Yes. Hence, we're changing some stuff. All right, let's move on to week 2.
Okay.
Seeing like a hero maker. After we were thinking about it, now we're going to see.
Yeah.
I wonder what the gesture will be. This?
Probably something like that.
All right.
And this is a shift from focusing on my own abilities and what I'm bringing to the table to instead envisioning what God can do through the lives of others and calling out those gifts in others. And I think, again, right from the beginning, we see this with Jesus when he said, come follow me. But he said something else too. He said, I will make you fishers of men. And kind of to understand that what he was doing with Peter and John in that moment was giving them a vision for how God could use them that was beyond anything that they saw in themselves. And you see this over and over again. Jesus sends out 72 to do the work, and then they come back and they're like, man, it worked. Kind of stuff like that.
I can't believe it.
That we have the words that he says to us in John 14, that we will do even greater things than him because of the Spirit that he's going to give us. And And then again, looking at another version of the Great Commission in the end of John 20, he's kind of saying, I'm sending you as the Father sent me, so I'm sending you. And so, we kind of see this pattern in Jesus, and there's a few more in the map examples of where he's always like, you can do it, you can do it. Like he's empowering other people to do things. And so in this one, it's again thinking of those people that God is calling you to invest in. The simple tool is the I see in you conversation, and which aligns pretty good with the book. That one's one that translates well. And so just to be challenging people to think about, who are the people in your lives and maybe it's becoming more and more clear to you by week 2 in this series who you really are to be investing in. And so how can you have I see in you conversations with those people?
That's awesome. I love that. All right, week 3, and then this is a child dedication Sunday.
Yes.
So that we all know. But this week we're talking about loving like a hero maker.
And I'm just now realizing that I didn't tell you that we changed the title. So this is a new title from the annual brainstorm.
All right. What's the new title?
No, it is Love It. No, I mean, it was.
Oh, you're saying this is new.
It was sharing a hero maker. And we just, as we brainstormed, even though sharing appears in the big idea statement, we felt like the word loving like a hero maker better fit this kind of everyday person version of hero maker.
Oh, no, that's good. If it's correct in this map,
here, we're all good.
I'm a huge fan.
I just forgot to tell Sherry to change it in all of the places.
Right.
Okay, so this is like about the, kind of the giving yourself relationally to the people that you are investing in. And so again, like the shift from information sharing to life sharing. And when you think about it, even if you're a small group leader and you have an apprentice, okay, maybe you've identified this is who I'm going to invest in, it can still be easy just to slip into information sharing that you meet each week. And it's like, okay, who's doing the icebreaker? And you just stick in that kind of place. Whereas what we see in Jesus' life, he was just not imparting information. He was actually, as we say, doing life with his apprentices. He was sharing his life with them. And so it's kind of, for us to think about that and how does it look like not just to be giving information, to the people that we're called to invest in, but actually investing ourselves, our hearts, our lives into them.
And this is where the diatribo construct shows up too.
That is correct. Yeah. That is correct.
Which I'm a huge fan of.
Which is in the map too. And then we also included, now we briefly hit this in the This Changes Everything series, but I feel like part of this year is maybe there's certain themes that we're just continuing to talk about, and being an apprentice is one of them. Where John Mark Comer, it's in the map there, had mapped out from the book of Matthew, where you actually see what is the tool that we use for this one, the 5 steps of apprenticeship, that you actually see them being lived out there between Jesus and his disciples. The I do, you watch, we talk, and on forward in those steps, that you actually see them there as Jesus. At first it's all Jesus and they're just watching,
right? And
then he starts giving them a role in it, and then eventually he's sending them to do, and he's and until ultimately when he leaves the earth, he commissions them and sends them out to go. So the tool in this one is the 5 steps of apprenticeship, and getting people to start thinking about how can I live that out in these relationships that I'm called to invest in.
How much, and maybe we don't know yet, but obviously within the context of small group leadership and apprenticeship, those 5 steps make a lot of sense. Is there, have you thought about yet, like just sort of outside of the context of small group or outside of the context of leadership?
I think all throughout this series we'll want to tell stories. And so whether it's like an example given, or whether it's a video, or whether it's a hypothetical or something like that, we'll want to, the same way in that sometimes when we do relationship series, we want to make sure that we're not just talking about marriage every week, that we're, okay, like let's give an example that's about friends, or let's give an example about that. I think we'll want to do the same thing in this.
Okay, gotcha.
We'll want to make sure as we go through the series that we have different types of, some could be parent to child, some could be small group leader to apprentice, some could be, boss to employee,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like whatever they might be, will want to tell different stories.
Gotcha. You know, that makes sense. I mean, because I think we can all sort of, we're used to I just had an idea. Actually, it was a text from
Somebody
to you.
to me.
But I think, you know, we can all sort of put ourselves in the Jesus and disciple relationship, because we can be the disciple,
Yeah.
the hypothetical disciple.
Yeah.
It's trying to figure out what that next iteration of it
Yeah.
is. And it makes, I'm quick to go to small group apprentice. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, how we can bring some of those other examples
into it. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Okay.
And you foreshadowed it already, but it's commissioning for week 4, because we're blessing like
Yes.
a hero maker. Was that the original title? Blessing?
It is. It is. There's something that I haven't cleared with Dave yet, so I'm going to talk about it this way, but then we'll see.
This is a hypothetical.
Yeah, it totally is. Well, this is blessing like a hero maker, and again, that's what the Great Commission even is. And we're going to use the Luke version of that as the springboard into that, because it says Jesus lift up his hands and blessed them. But this is the one where probably the majority of the text will be more in 1 Peter and Ephesians. And so part of what we're going to do in this one is try to break down maybe the sense, and this one may be a little more focused on the church. Try to break down the sense that, you have the professional staff people who are supposed to be doing all of this. And then there's just all of us that attend the church. And so we want to kind of address that in the concept of the priesthood of all believers, and that every one of us is equipped for this. And just as we, talk about how we're blessed to be a blessing, we're equipped to be equippers. And so help give people that kind of vision. So that's why I think we need to move beyond just what's in the Gospels there to some other things, because probably maybe even more than other ones, this one, people are going to go like, who am I to commission anybody?
Right. Right.
And so we need to
especially with the baggage of royal priesthood, and I mean, there's so many different backgrounds that prevent that from being explored.
Yeah. And we haven't developed this, but Ian kind of has this metaphor, this image of thinking of like, we're not called to be lakes but rivers, and the idea of like all the stuff that's been poured into us, and that we're not meant to just kind of keep it there. It's supposed to flow out of us then to other people. And so we'll have to think of some, again, the question you were asking there, I have on the map, we'll have to think of tangible examples of how we bless others, whether it's kids, coworkers, neighbors, friends, as hero makers. And here is where it got a little tricky and a little fuzzy for us is, we plan to end this time with a time of commissioning. And if I'm just in the series thinking, what we want to do, and this is what we have on the map, following the series, we see this commissioning as a time to say, okay, you know what, let's especially right now commission, and we had it as small group leaders, but it could really be all leaders in our church. Let's especially commission the leaders in our church by having them stand up and recognizing them and praying a prayer of commission over them. But then maybe we would have a come forward moment for anyone that wants to be commissioned as a hero maker in the roles that they're playing. Where that, and it might already sound this way to you guys, where this is different is we were having a hard time reconciling the idea of the small group commissioning, which is set for this day, which has traditionally been more of a, hey, what mission has your small group identified that we're going to commission you for on this day? And, a couple reasons we were struggling with it is, one, is it feels like not what the blessing is that we want to be doing here. But also it was like, okay, one, I don't know how much small group mission has really been in the conversation. And it kind of feels like maybe it's not. And so, is that really what we should be doing on this day?
Or is that about including that as one of many different ways in which our small groups function?
Well, and it also felt like commissioning small groups felt like we were commissioning them to be the hero. carrying out some mission.
Right.
And so that's still a little fuzzy. It's probably a work in progress. We need to get some clarity around what we're really doing with this one, because
So it's a stay tuned on that until we kind of are able to.
Yeah, and as if you guys are brainstorming, if you have some ways to think about how we could, I don't know if what I'm saying is like making sense, but it feels like there's a lot of weird, kind of to make this a practice that happens in service.
Trying to make sure it's not at cross purposes, I think, is the most.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it's in some way contradictory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, if we weren't planning to do a commissioning in the service, then maybe we would just talk about, here's an example of how you'd bless someone and all this. But if we're wanting to have that experience in service, what should that experience look like? Because it's not exactly what,
Well, and I think you're picking up on a very important part too. Like, even as I've been in the Hero Maker conversation over the last couple of years and helping sort of other churches more specifically figure it out ours, one of the things that keeps coming up is this concept of like, well, I'm called to do this work, so now you want me to invest time in helping other people figure that out, but this is my calling on my life. And so that shift takes a really long time, oftentimes. And so being intentional about, and it feels like it's going to pop up in every one of these, but being very intentional about like saying, no, this is the way to go. And it is concurrent with step one of finding your calling. Like, this is equal with finding your calling and helping others find their calling.
Yeah.
It's not step two necessarily, or phase 7. It's like, 1A and 1A.
Yeah.
And I think that's why when we were brainstorming this one, it almost felt like more we should be commissioning people who are saying yes to be hero makers, more than commissioning people for
a particular role
that they're going to play, because then it felt like we were just making heroes.
Yeah.
So,
but
we
I
got
also,
all confused.
But I also think that, we're a church of small groups, and I think for small group to be like the apex or the front line of this, as an example, I think that is potentially appropriate and makes sense, because it's sort of like, okay, well, what's my first greatest opportunity to be a hero maker? It might actually be by being a small group leader or stepping into apprenticeship.
Which is why we thought about doing a special focused prayer of commissioning for small group leaders.
Yeah.
Like, by taking on that role, you have said, I'm going to invest my life in this. Right. And so recognizing them as hero makers and kind of championing that, but then having an open kind of come forward if you want to be commissioned as a hero maker.
I dig it.
So,
all right.
But that is different than what we've normally talked about as small group commissioning. Right. So we just need to make sure.
More to come on that then.
Yeah.
All right. Week 5 then wraps up the series, and we are winning like a hero maker.
Which, man, this one is a challenge too. Like, making into a again, like, this is something that church leaders talk about, but I don't know that like the average person is out there going,
win.
Yeah.
Win.
I'm counting my wins, So where we landed with that was, the shift from counting my own successes to counting kingdom successes. And so some of that is even that, like, just looking at, in the kingdom, the math is different. And where Jesus says, like, the last will be first, the first will be last. The Son of Man didn't come to serve, but to serve. All of those kind of things. And we decided that this whole, because again, in the book, it's almost more like, hey, don't count this instead. But that doesn't necessarily fit with our, so we went more from this counting my success to counting kingdom success. And, we've done in This Changes Everything, and I think it's going to show up again in some other series, like, part of how Ian and I are feeling, if part of the theme of this whole big idea year is kingdom, like, we're okay with that. And so again, here we might come back to this idea of, like, living, what does winning look like? And so when we began to wrestle with that, like, in our world, winning looks like, getting the corner office, having the biggest house on the block, the biggest bank account, that kind of stuff. But winning in Jesus' version of winning looks very different. And so, we do have a quote there from the book, so it's still in line with the book. That winning is it's about kingdom winning. In fact, back to Matthew 6:33, that's why Jesus said to seek first the kingdom. And so this one, I think what we're going to try to challenge people to do, which is maybe almost more the bedrock that makes you able to live out the hero maker things, is start saying, okay, what does it look like to seek the kingdom with my time, with my resources, with my connections, again, so that it's not all about my how do my connections benefit me? It might be, if I'm investing in you and I realize it's going to help you take a step forward in your career if I introduce you to this person.
Right.
And so what does that look like? And to realize that hero making really is a kingdom seeking endeavor. And the reward that we're looking for is not all of this stuff that the world offers. It's the well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah. And really, I mean, I think the potential emotional impact of those words, I think for that day, I do think that helps people see them as totally different things. And you don't have to get lost in the scoreboard type stuff that a church leader thinks about, but like just to have that. I mean, who doesn't want that moment with Jesus for him to say to us, well done, good and faithful servant? I think that's a very, very powerful part of scripture that we probably don't talk about enough.
Yeah. And so, but we did think if we were going to adapt the tool, again, as we do, instead, it's not like, okay, stop counting this and start counting this. It was instead more just a philosophical, like, how do I have a new scoreboard? Instead of looking at like my life as how am I counting my wins, my successes, if my scoreboard is how many heroes have I invested in? And look at that. And so the hope overall is to, have people walk away and maybe, it's a change in mindset in every relationship, but it's also maybe to have them walk away going, you know what, for the next 12 months, I'm going to invest my life in this person or these couple of people more intentionally maybe than I have in the past.
All right. Awesome. Well, I know Jeff has one question as he was looking at it and thinking about and I don't know that he's pitching a switch of placement, but could you talk just a little bit about the placement of week 5 as it compares to week 2? Jeff, do you want to shape that question?
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily pitching a change, but it just felt like pedagogically, this one was really set up
the whole
need for someone to like want to dig in and go, okay, wow, how do I do that? And then it's like, come back 3, 4, 5 to really get into the nitty gritty. So this, as you were reading through it, I almost went like, that content might be better earlier to make you want to lean in a little bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can cut this from the thing if that creates chaos.
It's hard because this last one feels like it's the inspiration, not the practical.
Right.
Which is making you feel that way.
Yeah.
But
maybe that's just my understanding of the write-up. But
yeah, no, I think it's true. And it's always the one challenge I would feel in that is I don't think they have any idea what a hero maker is if we don't do some of the practical before it, Okay. So but I'm feeling like we're following the pattern more because it's the order in the book. Yeah. So, I mean, we still have a few weeks before we really, I don't know when you guys start brainstorming on it, but, if something comes to mind in the meantime for you of how that could work, but that's the one, because I was feeling that when we were brainstorming it, it's kind of like, this is the why. But I don't know how you do all that without backing, like, they don't get what a hero maker is if you just start with that.
Right.
Sure.
So yeah, it's
interesting.
It's tricky.
Yep. All right, Jeff or Pat, any other questions or curiosities on content as you get set to brainstorm? Looks good.
Looks good to me. I've written down a couple like just questions to ponder, think about. I mean, I don't know if they're good in this time, but more or less just how my brain works.
Yeah.
just about like, you know, the flip side of this, maybe with, you know, people who are like, hey, I'm really looking for somebody to be my hero or my mentor.
Mm-hmm.
How do we address them? Maybe that people that are feeling lost or out of place, or looking for guidance in a lot of ways like that. There's just random thoughts that I've been writing down.
Mm-hmm.
And another one too, just like how do we, particularly on the commissioning weekend we're talking about, and even on the winning one, you know, if we do go this small group route, I wonder, you know, church-wide, if we know how many apprentice leaders are like taking over a small group and then winning together, we can celebrate that the week after, you know, kind of fun ideas like that we might want to think about how to use that commissioning moment really effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just random thoughts I'm writing down.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating in the podcast. We hope and pray that lots of great ideas come forth as a result. And I'm really looking forward to the series. I think it's going to be good.
All right.
Thanks everybody. This has been Tammy and Eric, along with Jeff and Pat, participating in the Big Idea podcast. Thanks everybody. See you later.
See ya.